name is Vic, and I'm going to show you how to do a brake job on a Chevy Avalanche. Here's the truck over here. As you can see, it's a used model, it's an 05. One of the things I have already done to it is put aftermarket tires and rims on it. The tires and rims on it now are 22 inches. The original ones were 17 inches. If you take a look at the tire, you can see the disc brake right through the spokes on the aluminum rim. Notice how small the disc brake system looks on that thing with those massive tires and rims on it. What we're going to do is put bigger rotors with replacement caliper brackets, which are accommodating the bigger rotors, and we're going to have much stronger braking. It's going to be approximately 33% better than it was originally. Okay, what we got over here is our 14-inch replacement rotors. These are the front ones, these are the back ones. They're directional, so you got to put it on the right side and the left side in the correct positions, in the correct spots, obviously. Here are the replacement caliper brackets. So you can put your stock calipers back on without spending extra money for no good reason. Anyways, you're going to need floor stands, you're going to need a floor jack, a breaker bar, and some hand tools. Alright, let's get to it. Over here we have the brake pads. They're ceramic brake pads. These ones are made by Monroe. The reason why I like Monroe over other brands is they actually come with the hardware. So you could be in the middle of a brake job on a weekend and find out, oh, one of the clips is broken. Shit. Where am I going to get a clip from? Well, guess what? It comes with it. You don't have to deal with those hassles. Alright, let's get to the brake job. I'm going to leave it like this. You don't have to have the wheel too far off the ground. This is more than high enough. Alrighty. So you need a breaker bar. I actually already broke off all the nuts. They're all loose. So what I'm going to do is use my Colt 45. Having all these extra tools around makes the job a little easier, but taking wheels off isn't a big deal. If you've done it before, you know what I'm talking about. Take her off. Great assembly. Good idea is to have the car in neutral with the ignition on, so you could actually turn and rotate the actual assembly so you could get at the back bolts a lot easier. So I'm going to do that now. Okay, here's a stock caliper assembly. There's a bolt at the top and there's a bolt at the bottom of it that holds the caliper in place. Good idea would be, before you even start attempting to even loosen the bolts, is grab some sort of a screwdriver or a little pry bar and slide it into the caliper, which makes it much easier to remove the caliper itself. Okay, that's good enough. In this particular truck, 18mm socket. We'll take off the two caliper bolts. There's one on the top and the bottom. I already loosened them off, obviously. Grab the caliper, give it a little wiggle, and slide her out. Move it out of the way. Careful you don't pull or stretch that hose or pinch it. Alrighty, brake pads. These pads are still in pretty good shape, but since we're putting, actually no they're not. I'll show you why. The outer pad looks like brand new. The inner pad, where the piston's actually pushing against it, is pretty well done its service life. Okay. Next step, remove the caliper bracket. There's two bolts back here. Same thing, 18mm. To remove the bolts, I've already loosened them with a breaker bar. Take the bolts off. Careful you don't lose them. Okay, got the second bolt off. I got the caliper bracket off. And now I'm going to pull the rotor off. Careful you don't drop the caliper when you do this. Okay. Time for the fun stuff. Okay, so I have everything apart. I got my new rotor over here. Here's the old rotor. You can see there's quite a bit of a difference in size. I'm going to go in and slap the rotor on. Now these are directional, so you got to make sure you're putting the right one on the right side. It's actually stamped on it with an R right beside the parts number. Okay, so the rotor's in. Now I'm going to get the replacement caliper bracket and install this next. So this slides over this like that. Get the fastening bolts. Oops. Got to kind of wiggle it around and find a hole. Okay, got that one on. Okay. Now it's a pretty good idea to get a bolt and put it in to hold the caliper, or I should say the rotor, against the bearing seat, hub seat. Okay, so that's nice and sturdy. I got this on. I got to tighten it down. So I got the ratchet. Tightening back the caliper brackets. Okay, you're going to want to torque these down. I don't have a torque wrench with me, but I'm going to use the breaker bar. I have quite a pretty good idea of the pressure I need to make it to approximately 60 foot-pounds. Okay, that one's good. Okay, so that's all tight. Next step is to put the brake pad metal clips on the top and bottom of the bracket. So now that I have the caliper bracket fastened and I got the rotor on, I'm going to go ahead and put on these metal sliders for the brake pads. Tap it. Nope. There we go. Be gentle though, you don't want to bend it. It pretty well locks into place, like so. And then the top one. This hardware actually came with the brake pads that I mentioned earlier. Same deal over here, you want to tap it a little bit. It's kind of like a compressed, springy fitting. It just kind of snaps on. Being a bitch. I want to cut that. There it goes. Okay. Beautiful. Okay, so the sliders are on. Next step would be, Monroe actually gives you lubricant. These are not for the pads. You do not put them on the pads. I see a lot of videos where people say we put silicone on the pads to keep them quiet. You do not put silicone on the pad. Some people put it on the back to prevent it from squealing, and when the pad wears out, prevent it from vibrating because the silicone actually sticks the pad to the caliper. So I'm not going to put anything on it there because I think it's fine, but I am going to put a very, very slight little bit of brakes lubricant on the slider. Just spread it with my glove. You don't want to get it on the pads. Put some on my finger here to the top one. There you go. This will assure there's no binding when you apply the brakes and the pads compress. So I have the aftermarket caliper bracket, and what am I going to do is put the disc brake pads on first before I actually install it onto the rotor, or you won't be able to put on the caliper or the pad. So I'm going to slide on, make sure you put them on in the right way. I'm going to slide on the one that would be on the outside of the caliper first. Just got to play with it a little bit to get it in there. You can see I installed a new slider that came with the brake pads. Oops, there we go. There we go. Okay, just slide it right to the end. And it's actually got a stopper on it, so it'll stop You'll know you're at the end. I'm going to just give it a little tap. Just be gentle with it. You don't want to break the braking material. Okay, now that I got the pads in, sitting on the caliper bracket, I'm going to grab the caliper. Just be careful you don't pinch that hose or twist it when you're doing this. Bring it along. I'm going to push in against the little rubbers on the back here where the pins slide in. And then slide the caliper on. There we go. And then I'm going to grab the pins that I just greased up. It's got a little bit too much grease on it. Let me just kind of like feather it down a little bit. Where'd the right go? Okay, so I got the caliper pins in. I'm just going to tighten them up. Okay, now that we got everything assembled, I'm going to throw the wheel back on. We had a problem with the caliper leaking out of one of the pistons, so I went ahead and ordered a new caliper. I haven't changed anything on this side yet, but I am installing the caliper just to keep this oil, brake fluid dripping all over the place from going up into the shop floor, which is a little too late right now. Make sure you put new copper washers on if you ever take a caliper off. Copper washer on the top of the bolt, copper washer on the bottom of the bolt. Line it up with the threads on the caliper, a little line fitting. Okay, so I'm taking off the caliper bracket on the driver's side. This is the side that we discovered a failure in the caliper. It was leaking fluid, so I had it replaced. I got the new one over here. I still got to bleed it. Taking off the brackets. In order to bleed the caliper, you should have the assembly all together, so I'm going to throw the new brake system on. Okay, caliper bracket assembly. Just get it out of the way. Brake pads are still on it. There we go. Just put it aside. And we'll pull the rotor off. If your brakes haven't been serviced in a really long time, these rotors usually seize onto the bearing, and you could tap it with a hammer to get it off. In this case, it came up. This one's marked left from the factory, so you know it's left. It's engraved in the front. You can't really see it on camera. It's got an engraving on the side over here. So I'm going to put the rotor on. I'm going to grab a lug nut just to hold the rotor in place. Screw that in. Okay, so I got that on. Next step, put the slider brackets on for the pads. They only go on one way. They clip on just like on the other side. It's a lot easier to do off the car. Still going to have to tap it with a hammer. Come on, you little guy. Tap with a screwdriver. Okay, that one's on. And then the top. Could be the bottom. They're exactly the same. Same thing. I'm going to have to give her a little bit. Oh, this one went in. There we go. That one slid in, no problem. Okay, beautiful. So the sliders are on. Next step, you got to put the brake pads on. The outside one will not go on if you assemble this and then decide to put the pad on next. It won't work that way. Again, get a little bit of grease, put it on the sliders. Anti-seize compound will work too. The brake pads actually come with grease you could use. I prefer this. Just handier than opening up little plastic packages. Okay, so this pad has no sensor on it. So that one goes on first. That will be on the outside. Slider on. Got a lot of spring force in here, so it's kind of difficult to slip it on that very easily. Might want to give it a little tap. There she goes. Oh, it slipped out the bottom. What are the chances? There you go. Try to keep the bottom from coming out. Notice I'm not hitting the pad, I'm hitting the metal behind the pad. You don't want to be hitting the pad with the end of the screwdriver, you're going to just start chipping away at it. It's a soft material. Okay. Using the handle, just be gentle. Okay, got that sitting on the end. That's good. Pad, I'll put it on after the caliper's bolted up, you don't need to. But the outside one, you got to put the pad on first or it will not go on. Just make it a little easier. I'll tighten it again with the breaker bar. Make sure she's nice and tight. Okay, that one's good. Alright, so that's in. Now, put in an inner pad. Slide the inner pad on. Sometimes it needs a little persuasion. I'm just tapping on the top of the metal on the pad. There she goes, she's in. Just tap it into place. Okay, that's all assembled. Now, the new brake caliper. Make sure you don't twist that line. Gently slide it over the rubbers and slip it into place. Well, that's it then. We got the new brake system in, front and back. We didn't show you doing the back one, but the back and the front is exactly the same. The only difference between them is the back one's got a parking brake, which is internal, something you don't have to worry about, but it is a good idea to inspect the pads for the parking brake as you're doing the job. Obviously, you don't want to put it together and then replace the pads later on, taking it all apart again. Anyways, thanks for coming out. Thanks for watching this video. Hope to see you again on the next one.